about a year ago, I got an interesting Instagram message from one of our followers, and we'll probably have to do a series now of some of the stories of chasing cars and pursuing cars and using social media. I mean, it's really, I would say, revolutionized or completely turned the entire classic car industry upside down. The fact that, you know, there's collectors on Instagram and Facebook, so you never know where you could potentially find a car. And I get this message, and it's from a gentleman, a younger guy out of Washington State, that says that he has potentially discovered a Miura SV, that his neighbor doesn't really know the value of what it's worth, and he wants to sell his Miura SV and the rest of his collection, including an Aston Martin, a Porsche 911. And I mean, immediately I got super excited. I said, hey, what can you tell me about the car? And, you know, most Miura SVs were produced in red. So when you hear of, you know, a blue or a unique color, it is pretty exciting. So he tells me that he's found a medium metallic blue over tan, an orange tan interior with gold wheels and gold bottom Miura SV. Now, I immediately start going into my records. I'm looking at, Joe Saki's Miura Bible book. I'm looking at the Miura Register. I'm looking at all these places to see which car this could be. And I quickly narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 cars, but it doesn't really make sense within their story or their history. So I'm asking him more questions. What can you tell me? He tells me, you know, some information about the car. And as he's telling me this, he gives me his neighbor's name. He gives me an address. The name I couldn't match up using some of the tools we use of what you can legally look up or use for public data. You couldn't match up the location of the address with a name. But he started to tell me a story about a guy, and that his brother and the family owned an armory company. So like they would deal in guns or make bullets and things like that in Wisconsin originally. And the brother had died, and this gentleman had inherited the cars. And the story, when I started to do research, actually made sense. So it was, and I shouldn't say this person's name, but it was a Mr. LM and Mr. M, the brother. I researched, I found out who he was. I started to look at property records to see, okay, did he ever own any nice piece of property? Did it make sense? Yes, he did. Did they own this company? Yes, it sold at one point. So all of the little, I would say, crevices and crumbs when you're chasing a car made sense. And man, I can't even imagine. I was so excited. I started calling other colleagues. Do you know this car? What do you think? So I start chasing this kid. And a couple of the I would say, during this chase, he told me that he's an older man in his 80s, the neighbor, and he doesn't, because of COVID, and this was last year, so because of COVID, he didn't want anyone on his property. Okay. So I still waited, and I was trying to do more research, and then I started thinking, well, maybe the car wasn't originally blue. It's possible that it was a red car painted blue, so I started, looking at all the Miura SVs that were in the U.S. that potentially have disappeared. So then I narrowed it down to like 6 or 7 cars, and honestly, I was just everywhere. At one point, I spoke to a colleague of mine in Europe, and I said, it's potentially a blue Tahiti car that did come to the U.S. He told me, no, it's impossible. It's with a collector in Arizona. And I said, no, I think it did end up in Wisconsin at one point. And I got into a full-blown banter about a very specific Miura SV that was in Tahiti blue. So fast forward, I am chasing this guy probably once a week at this point. He ends up giving me his neighbor's cell phone number. And he says, my neighbor's he's a weird guy. He's an older guy. He's not letting me in to see the car, take photos. You call him and you try to work out a deal. And I said, listen, I'm going to pay you incredibly well if this is true. Do not worry. He said, he wanted a 911 out of the collection. I said, if I can get the cars at this price, I'll give you that 911. How about that? And, it was sort of this funny, banter back and forth. And I started calling this old man. I will say his first name, Lee. And I would just leave him a message. Nothing. I go back to Instagram. I message this young guy and I say, hey, what do you think is going on? He says, well, he doesn't take calls past 4 p.m. and he's available At like between 7 and 8 a.m. he goes for a walk. So you have to call him after 8 a.m. So I literally have this schedule now where I try to leave this guy a message, try to reach this guy, and I'm getting nowhere. Now 6 months gone by, and we basically bring in a young guy like myself, a car nerd, to start researching, chasing cars. And this was one of my first tasks. I said, hey, Steven, who will eventually be joining our team, and this guy is as passionate and as tenacious as I am. I said, here's this cell number, here's this guy. I don't know, maybe you get him on the phone, maybe you reach him. So Steven, who is quite like myself in many ways, a younger version, starts calling the guy. He gets nowhere. And I think at one point, I even got a little frustrated with Steven because I'm like, what the fuck? Why can't you reach this guy? And not thinking that, for 4 months, I tried to reach him and got nowhere. So again, I'd send this young guy messages on Instagram, and he'd say, oh, I'm traveling in Bali, which was true. I actually went to his stories. I stalked him a little bit. He said, he's traveling. Okay, he's traveling. He said, I can't go to the house. And I sort of, in the back of my head, I even sort of collaborated with other colleagues and said, hey, do you know this collection? Do you know of this guy? No, never heard of it. And I even heard of rumors that at one point the cars or a collection like this were advertised in Washington State for $1 million for all the cars, which would have been an incredible deal. So anyways, I kept digging, and I even have it on a list in my phone of cars that I'm searching or chasing. About a week ago, we've sort of in a mode of buy and looking for great inventory now. I said, you know what, I'm gonna personally chase this car again. I'm gonna figure this out. So I started doing some research, and I said, you know what, I've never Googled the phone number. Like, maybe if I Google the phone number, I can get, another crumb of info or something more about this mythical blue metallic Miura SV in Washington State. So I Googled the phone number, and this was actually a few days ago, so it'll be easy for me to find the result here. And let's see what we got. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. So I was able to find on Google a few ads that this number was associated to, and they were actually for a female escort named Selena. My name is Selena. It's a pleasure to meet you and please you. My inviting scent and my lingering touch will leave you wanting more. These ads, there was a good amount of ads for a call girl in Washington State. So the state made sense, the number made sense. But I believe I had been had by an Instagram follower, basically had been chasing a fraud. So I reached out to the Instagram, this gentleman on Instagram, and I said, hey, what the f you gave me, is this a game? Like we've gone on for a year now. You gave me an escort's number. So I've been calling an escort for about a year. Our intern Steven has been calling an escort for a year. And at this point, I don't believe there is this gentleman named Lee that owns this collection of cars in Washington State. I think someone's playing a joke on me. His response to me, the young guy on Instagram said, that's weird. Maybe he has a side business. But I never got back to you, he said, because I had someone inspect the cars and they think the Miura is a kit car. So unfortunately, that is one of the, I would say, fruitless attempts in our business. It happens all the time. There's leads you chase, but you have to. I mean, you never know what is at the end of a lead. You never know what someone has in their garage. And you sort of have to be always optimistic. Over time, I've learned to be a lot more pessimistic. There is, and colleagues in my industry joke about all the brokers that, have 250 GTOs for sale or have all these cars. And then when you finally chase the lead, there's nothing at the end. But you never know. And you never know with social media because you never know what you're going to find. Maybe not a part 2 of this story, but we have another story coming up about something else that we found on social media that was a unicorn. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. We've got a ton more vintage supercar content coming.